Have you ever had this amazing idea, this powerful message, but when you tried to share it, it just fizzled out? Or maybe you've sat through a speech that was so boring you could barely keep your eyes open? Well, today we're going to fix that. We are going on a journey to turn your ideas into speeches that grab people, that resonate, and that actually make an impact.
Welcome to Quick Course Digest. We're about to dive deep into the world of public speaking, giving you a complete blueprint, from that very first spark of an idea all the way to that final round of applause. Let's get into it.
We're going to cover 5 key stages. First, laying a solid foundation with research. Then, building a really convincing argument. After that, crafting a clear structure, choosing just the right words, and finally, making a real, lasting impact. So, let's start at the beginning with the foundation.
You know that feeling of staring at a blank page? It can be pretty intimidating. But every single great speech starts right there. It all begins with solid research, turning that blank page into a solid ground of facts and insights you can build on.
So, where do you find all this great info? Well, you've got 2 main paths. On one hand, you have the library. It's awesome, full of curated, credible sources, and you have expert librarians who can point you in the right direction. On the other hand, you have the internet, which gives you instant access to, well, everything. But, and this is a big but, the responsibility is totally on you to figure out what's real and what's just noise.
To search smart online, you need to know about Boolean operators. Think of the word "and" as your focus tool. If you search for freedom of speech and United States, you're telling the search engine, hey, only show me stuff that has both of these things. It really helps you narrow it down.
Next up is OR, and this one does the exact opposite. It broadens your search. It's perfect when you're dealing with synonyms. So if you look for college or university, you'll get results that mention either one. It's like casting a much wider net to catch all the relevant info.
And then there's not. This is your filter. It's how you get rid of all the junk you don't want. Let's say you're researching Apple, the tech company. Searching for apple, not fruit, is going to save you a ton of time by getting rid of all those irrelevant results about, well, apples.
Okay, this is absolutely crucial. Once you find some information, you have to play detective. You have to ask yourself these questions. Is the author actually an expert on this? Could this source be biased? Are they trying to sell me something? Is this information even current, or is it from 10 years ago? Answering these questions is how you make sure your speech is built on a rock-solid foundation of truth.
So now you've got all this solid research. Awesome. It's time to build your argument. This is where you take all that raw data and transform it into a persuasive case that can actually change minds. Let's see how it's done. Think of this slide as your toolkit for persuasion. You've got statistics for that cold, hard proof. You have analogies to make really complex ideas feel simple and familiar. You have stories to create an emotional connection to make people feel what you're saying. And you have testimony to borrow credibility from experts. Honestly, the best speeches, they use a mix of all 4.
Look at this. This is the power of a story in action. I could stand up here and say, healthcare is expensive, and you'd probably just nod. But this quote, it puts a name, Ann Smith, and a number, $120,000, to the problem. Suddenly, you feel the weight of that. It turns an abstract issue into a very real, very human crisis.
And let's talk about the magic of analogies. When the first iPod came out, Steve Jobs could have just listed the tech specs, but who would care? Instead, he gave us this brilliant analogy: 1,000 songs in your pocket. Boom! In an instant, everyone got it. They didn't just understand what it was, they understood what it could do for them. That's a game changer.
Okay, you have your argument, you've got your evidence, now you need a blueprint. Seriously, a speech without a clear structure is just a jumbled mess of facts. But a speech with a solid structure, that's a journey, and you're the guide leading your audience every step of the way.
And the blueprint is actually pretty simple. It's a classic for a reason. First, your intro has to hook them. Grab their attention right away. Second, the body is where you deliver your main points, backing each one up with that awesome evidence we just talked about. And third, the conclusion wraps it all up neatly and leaves your audience with something powerful to think about. Now, within the body of your speech, how should you organize your points? Well, you've got choices. If you're telling a story or explaining a process, chronological just makes sense. If you're tackling a big, complex topic, breaking it down into smaller, topical categories is the way to go. And if you're trying to persuade someone, you can't beat the problem-solution pattern. Choosing the right structure makes your message so much clearer. All right, we've covered the big picture stuff, the
the structure. Now let's zoom in and get to the nitty-gritty, the actual words you choose. This can be the difference between a message that hits home and one that just flies over everyone's heads.
Just look at the difference here. Improve our community is so abstract, it's fuzzy. What does that even mean? But plant 50 new trees in the park and repair the broken sidewalks on Main Street, that's concrete. Your audience can literally see that in their mind's eye. Concrete language paints a picture, and pictures are incredibly powerful.
Okay, pro tip, be super careful with these weasel phrases. They sound like you're making a strong point, but they're actually just empty calories. Phrases like research has shown or many people say are a way of avoiding taking a real stance. They just weaken your credibility. If you believe something, say it directly. Own it.
All right, this is it, the final and maybe the most important piece of the entire puzzle, making a real impact. This goes beyond just delivering information. It's about forging a genuine connection with your audience on a much deeper level.
To be truly persuasive, you've got to appeal to your audience's head, their heart, and their gut. Aristotle figured this out thousands of years ago. Ethos is your credibility. Why should they trust you? Logos is the logic. Does your argument actually make sense? And pathos is emotion. Does your speech make them feel something? The speeches that change the world, they hit all three.
Now, as you build that logical case, you also have to be on the lookout for logical fallacies. They're like dirty tricks in an argument. A really common one is the straw man. This is where someone takes your argument, twists it into something ridiculous and easy to knock down, and then attacks that instead of what you actually said.
Here's a perfect everyday example. Person A makes a pretty reasonable suggestion, right? But look what person B does. They completely ignore the actual point and instead attack this extreme distorted version of it, throwing unlimited money with no accountability. Person B isn't even arguing with person A anymore. They're just fighting a scarecrow that they built themselves.
So there you have it. From the blank page to making a real impact, you now have the tools. And this isn't just about giving a speech, right? It's about making your voice heard, making your ideas matter in a world that's just full of noise. The only question left is, now that you have the tools, what message are you going to share?